Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Hindsight the Podcast. But before I get started with today's episode, I want to let you know that we'll be discussing some sensitive topics. This includes mental health, drug use, and suicide. If these topics are difficult for you, please take care while listening. If you or someone you know needs help, call the Suicide and Crisis Hotline at 988. Your well-being is important to me. Hey, welcome to Hindsight the Podcast. I'm your host, Lee Jones, and I'm thrilled to embark on this journey of exploration with you. We often find ourselves reflecting on the choices we've made and wondering how our lives might have unfolded differently if we had taken a different path. Here's the beauty of hindsight. It gives us a chance to gain wisdom and learn from our past decisions. Look, this podcast is a platform to dig deep into those pivotal moments and uncover the invaluable lessons hidden within. Look, I'm Lee Jones, your host, and I couldn't be more excited to have you on board. So let's dive right in and explore the fascinating realm of decisions on Hindsight the Podcast.
When you look back in hindsight, everything is 20/20. In hindsight, you make mistakes, we're learning from it. In hindsight, be yesterday and your tomorrow. In hindsight, it's so much clearer now. This is Hindsight the Podcast, and introducing your host, Lee Jones.
Welcome to Hindsight the Podcast. I'm your host, Lee Jones, and I'm joined by a remarkable woman who transformed her experiences as a single mother facing overwhelming challenges into a mission of empowerment. Katherine Babcock raised 3 children on her own, and life wasn't always easy. She had to deal with big challenges like her children's mental health, but she never gave up. And Katherine learned important lessons from her experiences, and now she's here to share them with us all. She's also started something amazing called Sargent Bubbles, where she helps people take care of themselves. So get ready to hear her inspiring story and learn how you can find strength even in the tough situations. Hey, Katherine, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Lee. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Thank you so much. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm 50 years old. I live in Denver, Colorado. All 3 of my children are now adults somehow. I don't know quite how we got raised to adults, but we did. We made it through. I live by myself. I've got 2 dogs, a 13-year-old Chihuahua and a 4-month-old Chihuahua who is just the biggest pain I've ever seen, but she's adorable. So I'm waiting for her to get through puppyhood so that my house can return to normal. Oh, she is something else. So even the vet told me that I better get insurance because she eats absolutely everything.
Oh, wow.
She's a big handful, but she's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So and I own Sargent Bubbles, and that's about me in a nutshell.
Yeah, I have my dog, Jasper. He's a Shih Tzu, 4. I think he just turned 4 years old this month. And, he's a handful, but he's slowed down as he gotten a little older. Not as crazy, not eating up everything.
That gives me hope. I'm so glad to hear that.
I know that's right. So Katherine, I'm just going to jump right into it. And just, talk to you a little bit, get to know you, and then understand some of your experiences. And hopefully in the end, we'll be able to pass on some strategies, some techniques, and even delve into Sargent Bubbles a little bit on how people can take care of themselves.
That sounds great.
So you navigated the challenges of raising 3 children on your own while dealing with their mental health, 2 of the 3. Can you recall a moment when you felt completely overwhelmed and how that experience kind of transformed your perspective?
I will tell you, Lee, that most of their childhood, I felt completely overwhelmed. My son was diagnosed with ADHD and bipolar when he was just 3 years old. And that's really, really young. People are not generally diagnosed that early, but even the pediatrician saw that there was an issue and sent us to a psychiatrist. And he was a struggle from the word go. He, as a baby, didn't want to be held, but didn't want to be put down. Didn't want to eat, but didn't want to not eat. It just was a struggle from the word go. And my daughter was not diagnosed until she was about 11. But at around age 10, she started self-harming herself and cutting her arms and legs severely. And I didn't know what to do with that. I was used to my son being suspended from school and constantly having to go in and have conferences with the principal and the teachers and call other kids' parents and apologize for my son's behavior. I was used to those kinds of things, but I was in no way prepared for when my daughter began cutting. That's a whole different level of pain on the parent's part. I know that kids cut to relieve some sort of pain and try to get some sort of handle on what they're feeling. But as a parent, watching your child go through that is just torture. And I can remember my son in high school developed a heroin habit, and I was just so defeated and I didn't know what to do. My daughter's cutting. My son has this heroin habit and is disappearing all the time. And I'm trying to be there for my middle son, who is a really good kid, who's just trying to go to school and make his way through life. And I remember sitting down just sobbing because I didn't know what to do. I had therapists telling me to do specific things, but when I did specific things, the school district would call social services on me, and I would have to deal with social services. And even though every complaint was unfounded and never had any issues with social services, it still took such a toll on me because I was just trying to do the best I could for my kids. And it seemed like every time we would try to implement a new strategy to help them flourish, another issue would pop up, or the issue that we were working on wasn't getting any better. And it just felt like I didn't know where to turn or what to do because nothing was getting any better.
The weight of continuous crises and challenges, it sounds like it's really suffocating.
Yes.
During this time, and I know you said it was the whole time, but can you share, if you had one, eventually I think you did, but can you share a specific instance when you found an unexpected glimmer of hope amidst the chaos, and how that moment reshaped your resilience?
I can. I clearly remember my son locking himself in the bathroom because he was going to commit suicide. And I called the police department to come over to get into my bathroom to save him. And the cop that showed up we had a lot of interaction with the police department. Our house is marked from the police department as a red zone, because they had to come out here so much, and it was such an unstable situation all the time with my son, Evan. And I remember Evan locking himself in the bathroom, and the cop that showed up was such a nurturing, wonderful, amazing person. And we hadn't had an interaction with a police officer like that before. We had had some really good police officers show up and really help, but not in this way. And this officer was able to get Evan calmed down and get me calmed down because I was freaking out that he was going to hurt himself. And this officer was such a blessing to get me to the point where I knew Evan wasn't going to hurt himself. I knew he was going to be safe. The officer got Evan talked down, and Evan was feeling better and wasn't at such a crisis high point. And it just made all the difference in the world. I could just breathe a breath of fresh air because Evan was on his way to he had a 72-hour psych hold. And I knew that for 72 hours, I didn't have to worry about what was going to go on, if he was going to be safe, how was I going to take care of him, what was going to be the next crisis. I just knew that for 72 hours, everything was safe. Everyone was okay. The officer had me at a place of being calm. And it was the most unexpected gift that I've ever gotten. And I will never forget that officer for doing that. And I felt so much better knowing that he went on a 72-hour hold and was eventually transferred to a psych hospital, where he stayed for, I think, about 2 weeks. But he was admitted many times to a psych hospital, so this wasn't the only time. But it was the one time that I knew that he was safe and there wasn't going to be turmoil in the house like there had been.
Right.
And that was such a gift, and I had so much hope after that.
That's beautiful, because you know, you listen to the news and there are a lot of interactions that don't go as well.
Absolutely.
Right, absolutely. So this is definitely an unexpected, and I wouldn't say unexpected. It's challenging, right? It's challenging for you. It's challenging for anyone who has to interact, right, and approach situations as they are, right? Especially
Yes.
police officers, right, who are trained to deal with disturbances and, you know, whatever they're trained for. So to hear that this officer was trained and was compassionate and empathetic to the situation and gave you some peace is encouraging, right? And hopefully we'll see that as a lasting or a building block, right, for police officers. I know this was a while ago, right? But still, you know, the training is there, is the point.
It was. And, you know, that officer went out of their way to really help us. And Evan, the time before the police had shown up, Evan had taken a bottle of lighter fluid in one hand and a lighter in the other hand and was threatening the police to come get him. And so those were the kind of interactions that I was used to having with the police. And of course, the police are on high alert because they've got this kid threatening them with the lighter fluid and the fire. But this officer just really went out of their way to help. And it was just such a calming experience. And I had so much hope after that it was just such a gift. I don't know that officer ever knows what a gift they gave me that night.
Raising children with mental health issues is a journey. Many may not fully understand. I don't fully understand it, right? Could you describe a failure or a setback you encountered as a parent that eventually became a catalyst for positive change? And I know just navigating through it is difficult because you don't have a playbook, right? You just got to react. But is there something that you just look back and you're like, I failed in that moment, but that became a catalyst for you for a positive change?
You know, I can think of many moments like that because it seemed like I was always tripping up. And it's no matter, I had the best of intentions. I loved my kids beyond belief, but it just seemed like no matter what I tried, I goofed. And I remember one time Evan and I getting into it, and I really wanted him to understand that he needed to get off of the heroin and he needed to start taking his mental illness medications again. He had to be on his psychotropic medications, and he wasn't taking them. He was flushing them. He was spitting them out in the drain. He was hiding them in the trash. And so I thought, all right, I'm going to teach him, you know, what it's all about. And I took him to a homeless center and was hoping to expose him to the people that weren't taking their medications and were having alcohol and drug issues. And it was such a backfire. Evan was so disrespectful and so obnoxious when we went. It was such a backfire, and I was so embarrassed. And I really thought that would teach him, you know, we lived in a nice home. We lived in the upper middle class. He went to a good school. I really thought that would teach him where his life was headed. And it didn't. It didn't have any effect on him at all. And I was just so defeated and deflated and really backfired. But about a week later, I heard Evan telling someone else that he did not want to end up at that place and that he better get his butt in gear and get to working on what he needed to work on and start taking his meds because he was afraid he was going to wind up at that homeless center. And here I was convinced that had no effect on him, you know, and it didn't do anything for him. But I overheard him telling someone else that he was afraid he was going to wind up there. And I just thought, well, maybe what I do does have an impact on my kids. Maybe I am a positive force in their lives, even when I feel like I screw up. And there were a lot of times that I screwed up, and there were a lot of things I wish I could have taken back and changed and done over.
Right.
But you only get the shot once,
Right.
you can't go back and change the past. So it was difficult, but I was so proud of him for, at that point, trying to get back on his meds and trying, I guess people with mental illness don't like taking their psychotropic medication because they don't like how it makes them feel. There are a lot of side effects. And I have to say that Evan now takes all of his medication and does what he needs to do. So does Rebecca, my daughter.
Right.
But there was such a long period where he fought any kind of intervention like that. And it made him such a better person to be around when he was on his medication, but he hated it. So it was a real balancing act trying to get him to take it so that the rest of us could live with him and still have him feel like his normal self, I guess.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, that's a great lesson for parents of any type of kids. One, to give them the tools, right,
Yes.
to deal with stuff. And I say that because a lot of times as a parent, you don't really always, until later on, maybe in life, you don't get that recognition from your child that they've understood what it is you're trying to teach them, but you planted a seed.
Yes.
Right. And so I know just to hear him say, I need to get myself together, felt amazing. Right. Because you don't think you're reaching them. Right.
Right. Right. We did the same thing with a jail tour once because I wanted Evan to know that he was going to wind up in jail and I wanted him to see what it would feel like. And I was a paramedic at the time. I had a bunch of police officer friends, and one of my friends said that she would lock Evan in a cell for a little while so that he could see what it felt like. And I didn't think that had an effect on him, but later on figured out that it did. He admitted to me that it did.
Right.
He still wound up in prison, but what are you going to do? I did the best I could at the time.
You just got to give them the lessons, give them the tools. Right. And it'll get in there. It'll get in there eventually.
Eventually.
Describe how you are normally when you're out and about. Are you have these struggles, right? But are you smiling and happy on the outside?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So when you present yourself to your colleagues and, your friends, how is your disposition?
A lot of people had no idea what I was going through because I did have a positive outlook on life. I still am a smiling person. I'm just a positive person by nature. And I was embarrassed about what we were going through. And I didn't want other people to know exactly what we were going through. So I was very happy-go-lucky, smiling. And the other side of that was that I was afraid that if I let that guard down, I wasn't going to be able to get it back up again. I was afraid I was going to fall apart if I quit smiling and showing the world the positive Katherine. I was afraid I would totally fall apart and I would never get back to being a smiling person again.
So you have an outward sunny disposition despite the internal struggles, right?
Yes.
Can you speak on a moment when keeping that mask on became particularly challenging and how you coped with it?
Well, I remember going out to lunch with my girlfriends and we all had kids around the same age. In fact, two of my friends and I all had our babies within a 2-month span. So our kids were exactly the same age. And I remember them talking about the teams that their kids were on, and doing karate and Boy Scouts and this and that, and how they were successful at school and how one of their kids made honor roll. And inside I was just dying. I was just dying because here we had tried football, we had tried soccer, karate, Boy Scouts. None of those things worked with Evan. Evan wasn't able to participate in any of those clubs. And so I was so embarrassed and I was right on the verge of losing it and was so embarrassed. And finally someone asked me what my kids were up to. And I did crack a little bit and said, we're having a hard time. We're all in therapy. The kids are in therapy. We do family therapy. Evan just got out of the mental hospital. And I could see mouths drop around the table as I said all that, which just made it worse.
Right.
But, later I had phone calls with those friends. I received phone calls from a couple of those people who said, I had no idea you were going through that. What can I do to help? And that was such a huge relief. There wasn't anything specifically that they could do. They couldn't make it all better, but just knowing that I had people there that I could talk to about it instead of having to keep it all inside was such a nice feeling, that it wasn't all burdened on my shoulders, that I could actually talk to other people about it, because I was truly afraid to let anybody in on my full reality, because I couldn't believe my full reality. How was someone else? I've had so many people tell me that I need to write a book because there were just so many things that it was just one thing after another. And I had family members, because we live in Denver, I live really close to where the Columbine shootings happened. The high school shootings happened years ago. And I had family members very concerned that Evan was going to shoot up his school. And so I'm trying to allay all these fears and still take everything in, and consider it. And it really took a toll mentally, but I just had to keep smiling, because if I didn't, I don't know what would have happened to the four of us.
Right.
I really didn't.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, there's another great lesson, right? A lot of times we carry the burdens on our own because it's kind of easier. And I know that doesn't sound right, but it's easier instead of trying to, pass that burden on and then be judged or looked at differently from friends, right? So it's just easier at the time to internalize it and keep it to yourself. So it was a great lesson that you did have that opportunity to let that open up, remove the mask just a bit. And then the response that you got from your friends was encouraging and amazing. And a lot of times your friends, your true friends, are there to help you, though they can't help in that specific instance. Like you said, just being there and understanding that you're going through things in an ear when you need it is an amazing story of great friends.
It makes all the difference in the world. And I can remember calling a couple of my friends and just sobbing and not even being able to speak because I couldn't believe, Evan had been expelled again. And I couldn't believe that he was expelled from the expulsion school. He was the first kid ever in their history to be expelled from the expulsion school. And I just couldn't believe some of the things that he did. And I would just call and just sob and cry, and they would just sit there with me. And that made all the difference in the world.
Right.
You don't always have to have the answers. Even just sitting there with someone while they go through something can be an amazing gift.
So you spent a lot of time, obviously, focusing on your kids and reflecting on your years, reflecting back now in hindsight on your selflessness. Can you pinpoint a specific instance when putting yourself last had unintended consequences? And how did this realization drive you towards a different path?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I always put myself last. The kids growing up just...
A lot of moms do.
You do. It's kind of second nature. And I was so busy dealing with running Rebecca to the hospital to get stitches or, trying to get Evan out of his latest mess that I didn't really pay much attention to myself. And that's, I think, why I'm on such a trajectory now to spread the importance of self-care, because I didn't take care of myself. I always came last. I didn't do anything for myself. And I can't think of a time. I was so used to putting myself last. I can't think of a time that it had unintended consequences, because I just didn't. I was Evan's mom, Rebecca's mom, Alex's mom. I was not Katherine the person.
Right.
I was the shuttle to the therapy office. I was the pickup person for the medications. I was the whatever, and I can't think of a time that putting myself last, it always had unintended consequences, because I realize now that had I practiced a little bit of self-care over the years, I may have been a much better parent. And I can't say that for sure, but I can only guess. But my guess is, had I taken some time for just me, I probably would have been a much happier person, which in turn would have led to me being a much better mother.
Right.
And I don't think that I was a bad mom at all. I think I was a really good mom, especially with the hand that I was dealt. But hearing my kids talk now, they talk about how hard it was, how hard their childhoods were. And it just pains me, because I did everything I could to make sure that they had what they needed, what they wanted, and did everything I could to celebrate birthdays and do what I could. That it hurts now to hear them say that they had such a hard time as a child in their childhoods. But, when I was a paramedic, I blew out my back and became disabled. And that added a whole new level of issues to the already festering issues that we had going on at home, because I had to now deal with chronic pain. I had to deal with not having a job and not being able to work. And that just added a whole new layer on top of everything. And so it became really difficult, but it was really difficult. But
yeah.
But I can't think of a time that putting myself last had unintended consequences, because I always put myself last. And I really, really wish that I hadn't.
The transition from years of self-neglect to prioritizing your self-care is inspiring. Could you share a failure or a mistake that you encountered during this transition and how you used it to refine your self-care approach?
Oh,
did you overcompensate, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just focusing on me.
Yes. As soon as I got all of them out of the house, I focused on me.
Right.
And they still get angry because I now put myself first. And, in fact, my daughter is in the hospital as we speak, and she's sick. It's not a psych issue. It's that she's sick.
Mm-hmm.
And, she called me and wanted me to come up there. And I said, well, I've got to work, and I've got this podcast I'm doing, and I said, I'll try to come up afterward. And she got really miffed, because she feels like I should be there, like I normally would be. But now I have my own life and my own priorities, and I'm not willing to sacrifice those for anyone, because I'm not going back to the way it was. And it probably is a major overcompensation, because it's set in stone. I will do what I need to do, and then what I have left, I will give to you. But you guys are all adults now. She's engaged to be married, and you guys have your own lives and don't want me around when you don't need me. So, I'm not going to put my stuff on hold just because you guys need something.
Right. Yeah.
So, major overcompensation.
Sounds familiar.
Yes. I think they all go through that.
Absolutely.
The lessons we learn from our kids,
Oh man, it's the lessons that keep on teaching. So
yes, they do.
So let's talk a little bit about Sargent Bubbles, and opening Sargent. First of all, you can tell us a little bit about it, but here's my question as well. You opened it amidst a pandemic, which was undoubtedly a brave step. Can you talk about a significant obstacle you faced during this venture and how it helped you understand your own strength better?
It wasn't a brave step. It was stupid, because I didn't know what I was doing.
Don't be changing my question. No.
Sorry, Lee.
I was just playing. Go ahead.
Sargent Bubbles, we make handmade soaps, lotions, scrubs, bath bombs, lip balms, and lip glosses. And I love every aspect of it. But I opened it at the very beginning of the pandemic. Rebecca called me crying because she had lost her job and didn't know what she was going to do. And she had lost her job because of the pandemic. And I said, I have all this soap stuff sitting in my kitchen. I haven't made any of this soap yet. Why don't you come over and we'll work on your problem and we'll make soap together and I can get rid of these soap making supplies, and get my kitchen back.
Right.
And so she came over and we spent 4 or 5 days together making soap and we had a great time. We learned how to make soap because I didn't know what I was doing when we started this. I had never made soap before. This was a completely foreign concept to me. And she came over. We had a great time making soap. We made so much soap and so many body products that we gave them to all of my neighbors, our friends, our family, and we still had so much left. We didn't know what to do with all of this stuff. And Rebecca said, Mom, I want to start a business with you. Let's make this into a business. And I said, oh, that'd be fantastic. I would love to work with you and I would love to do this full time. So I immediately started making business cards. I got us incorporated. I immediately set forth building this business, which I had no clue about. I had never owned a small business before. I had never wanted to own a small business before. I had never crossed my mind before. And Rebecca came back a couple days later and said, Mom, I have to be honest with you. I went and got a job. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. Now I'm stuck, with this business that I just got off the ground and you have a job. What am I going to do? And I had to make a decision whether I was going to go forward with Sargent Bubbles on my own or scrap the whole idea. And I don't know why, but I just decided I was going to go for it.
Right.
And went for it. I did. I learned how to make all kinds of soaps and body scrubs and lotions and different concoctions. And I learned all about the skin and the skin barrier and what's good and what's not good. And so all of our products now are all natural and sourced locally as much as possible. And it was really important to me to integrate those things because I want people to know that our products are safe and they're well made. And I feel like that adds to you're doing something good. You're not only supporting a small business, but you're not hurting the environment and you're not doing anything to cause greater harm than you are taking care of yourself. And
Right.
if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
And-
absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, good. And so I overcompensated by making way too many products at the beginning, but I wanted to know what people liked and what they didn't like. And so I was making all of these products and giving them away to my friends. My poor next door neighbors were good friends, but they have tried every product that I have. They started my commercial. They have done everything they can to support my business. It's been wonderful, but
Nice.
I truly overcompensated by making way too many products and not knowing where they all would go. I didn't have
Right.
a home for them.
Right.
So it was a long, drawn out process, and I had many failures while I was making these products. I had a lot of soaps that didn't turn out. I had a lot of body scrubs that fell flat, but I just kept going. I would just trash it and move on and start the next idea that I had. So now we have a lot of products and they've all been tested by different people, so that I know that they're good products. And it's a lot of fun now. I have a great time with it. It's my whole reason for being now,
Right.
and Rebecca, to her credit, has not made a single bar of soap since I started this. She has not made one thing to contribute to Sargent Bubbles, but I guess that's okay. She got me started on the path.
She got
So I
you
guess
started.
her job was done.
That's awesome. And back to your journey. Your journey speaks to the significance of self-care. And I know you make soaps, but can you elaborate on a specific self-care practice that has had a profound impact on your life and how it contributed to your overall well-being? Now, I know you absolutely love what you're doing now, so that's part of it. But is there anything else in your self-care practice that really helps you out in your life now?
You know, I believe it is so important to have a nice bar of soap or a nice face mask now, because when my kids call and they're having whatever, they want me to put out whatever fire they have going on, I a lot of times will go put on a face mask and turn on some music and just veg for 15 minutes and not deal with the chaos that's going on. And usually at the end of those 15 minutes, the kids have either figured it out on their own or everybody's calmed down enough to deal with it, rationally and not like our hair is on fire.
Right.
And I just believe that it is for men and for women. I've got product lines for both men and women because I feel like men need to get in on this too. It's not just for women. But if you have a nice bar of soap to go take a bath or a shower with, and you're not just using your family's bar of Dial, it really uplifts your spirits and makes you feel good. And you look forward to that experience. And I don't know about anybody else, but a lot of times my showers are my decompression time. And it's when I can really relax. And I love having a nice, bar soap that smells good, that it's going to make my skin soft. And it's just, that's when I can really relax and de-stress. And I come up with some of my best product ideas in the shower. It's just kind of me time. And I don't know. It was never like that when my kids were growing up. It was how fast can I get in and out of the shower before somebody starts, the next crisis. It was truly as fast as I could shower when they were growing up. And now it's more of a luxurious experience because I don't have to rush like that. And it makes such a difference. My friends have said that I look better. I definitely smell better. And and it's just, I've had people tell me that my hair looks really great and that my skin is really clear. And it's all because not only using good products, but just because I'm respecting myself more now. And I'm taking the time to actually care for myself instead of worrying about what everybody else is doing. That all comes secondary to me now. It's all about me first. And even if it's just about me first for 15 minutes, that's all it takes, to be able to face whatever's going on in the world after that. Self-care doesn't have to take a long time. You can meditate for 20 minutes. You can use a good bar of soap. You can take a walk. There's all different kinds of things you can do. And that doesn't mean that you have to spend a long time doing it.
So looking back, what's one piece of advice you give to yourself during the times when you felt powerless and overwhelmed, knowing what you know now?
Take a time out.
Yep. I was about to say, you just said it.
Yep. Take a time out and focus on yourself for a few minutes, because there's nothing, you're so much better at dealing with crisis or at dealing with life or at dealing with whatever if you feel like you're taken care of. I believe that everybody has a love tank inside of them. And I truly believe that every time you give to someone or you do for someone, that love tank gets depleted just a little bit. And every time someone does for you or you feel loved, that love tank gets replenished. And I feel like after raising my kids, my love tank was totally depleted. There wasn't anything in there. But because I've been taking care of myself, I feel like my love tank has steadily been built back up. And it's so much easier for me to help my kids now or to help my neighbor or to do something for someone else because I don't feel like I'm at the bottom of the barrel anymore. I feel like I've got something to give because I feel like I'm taken care of. And I don't have a husband. I don't have a boyfriend. I don't have somebody else who's going to help take care of me. I just do it myself. And it makes such a big difference. It really, truly does. I can't stress that enough. And if you don't believe me, try it for just a week. Just give it a week and see, practice meditating or however you want to practice self-care. Try it for a week and see if it doesn't totally change your outlook. And I'm only talking about 15 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day.
Beautiful message. So thanks, Katherine. I've asked you several questions, and I appreciate your candor and your honesty and telling your story. But is there anything that we haven't discussed that you'd like to talk about, or any tips or advice you'd like to give to the listeners?
My only piece of advice, and the piece of advice that I live by, is never, never, ever, ever, never give up. No matter what is going on, no matter how big the hill seems, no matter how big the boulder seems that you're pushing up the hill, no matter what the situation seems like, whether it's legal or it's just personal, never give up. Never say die. And that has saved me so many times because I just refuse to give up. I can be the biggest pain in the butt because I refuse to give up. If there's something that I want to accomplish, or like my kids growing up into successful adults, I will never give up on pushing for that. And I will never give up on supporting my kids and trying to make sure that they lead good, positive lives. I will never give up on that. And I will do whatever I can to make sure that that happens, even today. And I feel the same way about my business. I will never give up. I will continue to fight until I find a way to make something happen. And I think that that goes for any area in your life. You just can't ever give up, because if you don't fight your fight, who's going to? You have to fight it. So never give up. Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow. Katherine, I want to express my gratitude for sharing such an your inspiring journey with us.
Thank you.
Your story is a testament of resilience and the power of self-care. And before we say goodbye, could you please let our listeners know where they can find or learn more about your story and the wonderful work that you're doing now?
Absolutely. My website is sargentbubbles.com, SARGENT bubbles.com. And if you want to get in touch with me, there is a contact form on the website that you're free to use. We are also on Facebook and Instagram under Sargent Bubbles. And that's where we hang out most of the time when we're not in the soapery making soap. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram.
Thank you once again, Katherine, for being a guest on Hindsight the Podcast.
I appreciate it, Lee. I had a good time.
I did too. And you had some great points in there. And I'm glad things worked out the way they did in the end, right? And that you're in a good space now. And I think the lessons that you talked about are important for a lot of people, because there's, a lot of things that people are struggling with and going through, right? And you just want to give up sometimes. And knowing that there are people, you don't have to struggle alone, right? Yep. Sometimes it is that way, unfortunately, but a lot of times there are people who are there, right, to help support you. Right. So open up, take that mask off just a little bit and seek some help. That's the first thing, some support. And then 2, never giving up. I mean, you can't say it any better than that. Never give up, right? As long as you're here, there's a fight to be fought.
Yep.
There's a fight to be fight. As long as you're here, there's a fight to be fought. There you go. So never give up. And thanks once again, Katherine. And
thank you, Lee.
We'll talk soon. I'll follow you. I'm going to look up. Have you seen a request for me on Sargent Bubbles?
I have not.
Instagram? Okay. You'll see it today.
Awesome. I can't wait.
Okay. I'll talk to you soon, Katherine.
Thank you so much, Lee. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to Hindsight the Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I did. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated on future episodes packed with inspiring stories. Before you go, leave me a message with your thoughts, feedback, or suggestions for future topics. And if you're loving what you hear, please take a moment to rate this episode. Your feedback helps me to grow and reach more listeners just like you. So remember, life's a journey. Stay tuned, stay curious, and keep gaining wisdom through the power of hindsight. Until next time. Oh, and don't forget, subscribe, leave a message, and rate this episode.
But when you look back in hindsight, everything is 2020.